All right, so in this video, we are going to nail 308 or 7.62 by 51. This is Lake City brass. It's already been cleaned. And this is actually already decapped. Check out the previous video on this, especially on this 556 Lake City brass where we decapped it first. Make sure I'm doing 100. Make sure you check out also our website, www.epintegrations.com. EP Integrations lockdown blocks, they're fully adjustable from 300 blackout all the way up to 338 Lapua. So make sure you check those out. That is 100 with a few extra for follower shots or in case I need to throw a couple away. It's 223 that we just annealed. Make sure you check out that video on our YouTube channel. As I explained in the previous video on 556, here is my 308 or 7.62 by 51 test brass. This has been annealed a billion times, been glowing red hot. I use this over and over, like I mentioned in the previous video, just to get the the location of the torch and the speed set up before I switch over to my actual reloaded brass. Now, this should be pretty cool by now. It's hopefully this is pretty cool from the previous reloading session. But like I said before, I like to keep a pair of lineman pliers here just in case I need to adjust this. Pretty rare I ever need to do that, but this seems to be cooled off by now, so we're good to go on that. Like I mentioned before in the previous video, I tried to get 1/4 inch of the main body to where it starts on the shoulder. So I'll adjust this in, and if I wasn't blabbering and recording this, I'd already have this done. But right about there should be good. So I'm going to lock down what we call the shim plate that screws in and out. Body of the brass, lock that down. Leave about 1/8 inch gap here at the end of the stopper bar and the shim plate. Drum around to the opening is in line with the fence. Back of this fence here is just in front of the shim plate. Switching over to 308 here and drop this down. I'm going to purposely lower this just for this video. You can see that it's getting caught up at the end of the shuttle. I'm going to adjust this in case this drops right off that. And then once it drops off, I'm going to adjust it up ever so slightly. And I'm going to test this. Just make sure it's functioning properly. So once I've done this and it passes maybe 4 or 5. Now, as I mentioned in the previous video, make sure your clutch is set up. Let's hunt down 308 here, or 7.62 by 51. They're saying we need the large rifle plate and we need to set this on the #1 slot position on the window. So I can't do this with one hand. Let me pause this for a second. This is the small rifle plate. Just peel that off. Grab my large rifle plate. That's LG, large. Anything over 223 up to 338 Lapua that this shuttle can handle. So, and this is really easy. And then usually on this, I will adjust this up. Now, our system doesn't need any tools to adjust, but this does. And typically what I like to do is I have this really fine tip. I think if I was Dylan, I would redesign this so it's a little bit better, but I'll just untighten this, peel this down, and then push it over. So I get this in the #1 position that they're asking for here in their instructions. And this is where I'm just going to test this just for a little bit. I'm going to probably put this in the high 30s area. Just make sure that this is functioning properly. I can even speed this up a little bit, so all I'm doing is just testing. Now, this is my test brass just to show you that the body of the brass is sticking out about 1/4 inch. And I'm purposely going to keep these 3 pieces off to the side, as I did in the 223 example. Here is the EP Integrations lockdown block. I'm going to dump all this in here. 100. If it's 223 or below 223 or 300 blackout, I like to have this arrow pointing at the 9 o'clock position, pretty much right where that little hole in the acrylic glass is, maybe a smidge past. But at least for 308 and above, I'll usually put it at about the 10 o'clock mark. And the reason why that is, large rifle plate has these large gaps between it. And because of that, you need to speed up the process. At least with the small rifle plate, you can see these little gaps. And because of that, you need to slow down the case feeder, and that's why. All right, so let me get this gorgeous 2.2 or 5.56 Lake City brass we just annealed in this Ziploc bag. Make sure you're checking out that video. You don't want to miss out on this. Look at those gorgeous nails. All right, the case feeder is shut off. Here's my test brass that I've annealed a billion times. Here's my 3 pieces of actual reloaded brass. Just put your torch at the full bore setting. Let this run for a little bit like I mentioned in the previous video. The reason why I'm using test brass is to get the location of the torch squared away and the amount of time that the brass is in the flame to drop out perfectly before I switch over to my actual reloaded brass to lower my speed. I don't need to have it fast. I don't care if this gets gajillion degrees glowing hot. My main concern right now is just to get that located on the torch. And I get the tip of that torch pointing directly where the shoulder meets the neck. So about right there. So that kind of gives you a perfect idea. That is just barely touching. Turn the lights down so I can see the glow. I got this set up so I can turn the lights down, but obviously leave power to the annealer and the case feeder going. And grab another piece of test brass. I'm going to manually drop this. And I want this brass to glow on the neck and the start of the shoulder. I'm going to lower that down to about 31. And I want it so the neck and the shoulder just starts to glow and drops out. So I'm going to lower this down just ever so slightly. Neck and the shoulder just starts to glow. Hopefully you guys can pick that up on the camera. Let me switch this over to our actual reloaded brass here. Usually I wouldn't have this dark, but I'm trying to show this glow in the camera. And the neck and the shoulder just starts to glow. So let me turn some lights back on here. Let me try one more piece here. So right now we're at 29 on the readout. And drops out. So with the lights on, it's hard to see that glow, but look at that anneal. It's absolutely perfect. It's about 1/4 of an inch down the body of the brass. All right, so this is where we just kind of give her hell and turn the case feeder on. You can see it's loading up. Here comes our first culprit to drop down. And I'll just let this run for a little bit. I'm going to get these lights put on. Put the back out. And look at that. Exactly 1/4 of an inch down the body of the brass on that major anneal. That's absolutely awesome. Love it. Love it. So we're going to let this run. See, it's still kind of loading here. It's going to miss one out of there. And I got this set at the roughly 10 o'clock position. You can really crank this up if you want. When you start getting like 308 and above, you can start speeding this up. Not too much because it will start bypassing the window. But you can definitely speed this up a little bit more with these larger cartridges. You can see how this kind of deflects and pushes the double stacks off. So this one's going rear end first. Let me try and flip one of these over purposely for case mouth first. You'll see how it kind of bypasses then drops down. So look at some of these anneal marks. They're exactly 1/4 of an inch down the body of the brass. Grab this one if it's not too hot. Look at that. Gorgeous. Love it, love it, love it. Make sure this is tightened up. Good to go. See if I can get a view of this, both sides. You can really see how this works. You can See, this one's missing, and it needs to drop before this spins around. It still made it. And like I said, you can really crank this up if you want. You don't want to go too fast. About the 10 o'clock position's about perfect. Love it. Absolutely awesome. Now, like I mentioned in the previous video, how this works. This is the power supply that came with the Dillon XL750 case feeder. That just simply plugs into our wire harness with this female end here. And this sensor senses the brass, and it's adjustable. There's a little adjustment knob here. This should be close when you first get it. You might have to adjust it ever so slightly when you first set this up. Once you set this up, you can set it and forget it. You don't ever have to touch it again. And you get it so the laser coming out of this is pointing in the, usually I set this up with 223, get that sensor or laser, so it's pointing directly in the middle of the brass, and just so the sensor is in front of the drum. So when there is no brass, the sensor goes past the drum. And you can see when there is brass, it shuts the power off. There's a little LED light here on the physical solid state dry relay switch. And the reason why I went with the SSD relay switch is it will last for thousands and thousands of thousands of switches. And this is a quality optical sensor, and it will let the power flow through the case feeder when there is and isn't. It's like a hungry hippo. When it needs a piece of brass, it lets the power go through. And let's say we're about halfway through right now. Kind of give you an idea for some of the guys that are not familiar with case feeders, how this works. Yeah, look at some of these anneals, man. It's awesome. Get some of these super hot pieces out here. It's gorgeous. Not too hot. Like a hot tamale. Hot tamale. But yeah, look at that. The nail is exactly 1/4 inch on the body of the brass. Now, I mentioned this before in the previous video, is brass will show nail marks differently. So if you just clean brass, especially with a wet stainless steel tumbler, if you just cleaned it, it will not show really nice, deep, rich anneal marks like this on the 223 and the 556 that we just did. It will be annealed, and you can slightly see that anneal, but because it was just cleaned and there's no oxidization on the brass, it won't show this really gorgeous rainbow color anneal. Look how consistent those anneals are. But it doesn't mean it's not annealed. It just doesn't physically show it. Now, this brass has been sitting around since Christ was a child. I got my overstock of brass here. So we're getting down to the nitty-gritty here. You can see the power going through the relay switch here. Getting really close. I'd say we got about 15-20 pieces left. Man, these anneals look absolutely perfect. So we're going to count out this next piece here. 1 1000, 2 1000, 3 1000, 4 1000, 5 1000, 6 1000. So pretty much 6 seconds. We're going to count out the next piece. 1 1000, 2 1000, 3 1000, 4 1000, 5 1000, 6 1000. So yeah, about 6 seconds. So if you got 100 pieces, 6 times 100 is 600 seconds. 600 seconds divided by 60 is 10 minutes per 100 of 7.62 by 51 or 308. And currently I got this set at the 29 mark on the display. Now this display is, all it's telling you is, this is, look at it one way, is 29% of power or 29% of speed. I do not let this, I don't write this down, I don't keep track of it. I personally will use this as a reference if I'm going up or down. That's it. The next time I anneal, my torch might be a little closer, it might be a little further away. You know, it's just, I just let it tell me as a reference if I'm adjusting this. That's all it is. I let the glow tell me when this needs to come out, because the glow will produce that perfect, rich 1/4 inch mark down the body of the brass. If I can grab one of these and it isn't blazing red hot here, so let me grab this one maybe. So you can see that anneal mark is 1/4 inch down the body of the brass, and then the rainbow starts. If you follow these methods, at least what we do, we're getting down to the nitty-gritty here, it will produce that really nice, perfect 1/4 inch down the body anneal. I want 4 left. Just awesome. This is the giggle factor. Why have a hopper when you can have a case feeder? And especially when it can adjust on the main annealer from 5.7 by 28 to 50 BMG, rim or no rim. As for the case add-on, just from 300 blackout to 338 Lapua. It's just awesome, 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 awesome. So this thing is glowing red hot. Make sure you're not touching that thing. But I'm going to try my best to select some miscellaneous pieces out of here that are not too hot. So I'm just a miscellaneous, grab some pieces here. Things are glowing hot here. So let me grab another piece. We got a little bit of a dent in it. Might have to throw that one away. Gorgeous. Until that, you know, that, what do they call that? The rainbow glow starts after that 1/4 inch. It's what you call consistent annealing, consistent reloading. And we are good to go. In 308, check out the previous video on the 5.56. It's amazing, my friends. Trust me, if you get this set up with the Dillon case feeder with the add-on Dillon case feeder kit, you're really, really going to love it. So keep in mind, this does not include the Dillon case feeder. It gives you everything else to get you going. Well, if you got something out of this, make sure you subscribe, like, and share, and I'll see you guys in the next video.